Tell me one character that we can sort of reveal, and that's Lucius.
Yeah.
I love him.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I like Lucius too.
At the same time that he was one of those patricians
Right.
in the Romans. Now there is a discussion going on the internet about that guys or men think about the Roman times when you sort of ask them what they think about, and
Yeah.
sort of, and then they say that they think about the Romans. So reading your book would be to experience that, because you don't have maybe the very fighting people at the Circus Maximus, but
No.
but you have certainly these patricians, and they
Well-
are so at the same time they're a little funny, and the priests. I mean, you make me laugh.
Oh, well, that's good. I like to have some comedy in the books as
Yes, of
well, and
course.
some witticism. Well, the Holy Land was a Roman colony,
Yeah, of
so it
course.
was Romanized. And one aspect of that was Jews, some Jews, participated actively in the Roman Empire. They became what I call Latinized or Romanized. In other words, they spoke Latin. They didn't speak Aramaic or Hebrew because they were Romans. They happened to be Jews, but they were Romans. And they ate Roman food and dressed like the Romans and everything else. And so one of them in the novel is Lucius, this wealthy, Jewish, Romanized man who hires Lazarus, who's a mosaic maker, to put the mosaics in his swimming pool. People, I know it sounds strange, but the patricians, the rich Romans back then, did have swimming pools. And so that's where Lucius came in. And it was important for me to talk about that because, again, I wanted to talk about the multicultural aspect of the Holy Land, that there were Jews and Romanized Jews. They spoke Aramaic. There were Phoenicians who spoke Phoenician. There were Nabateans, who were the ancestors of the Arabs. There were Greek colonies. So it was a very rich, multicultural society. We tend to think of multiculturalism as a new phenomenon. No, it's been here forever. And Jerusalem exhibited all that multifaceted cultural wonder. And so I wanted to include that in the book. It was very important for me.
And you have Jerusalem as I would say, a character in the book.
Yeah.
I mean, the milieu where they are in that's they're always referring to. They're going to Jerusalem,
Right.
so they're living in Bethania, but they are always there. So you have all the different places in Jerusalem.
That's right.
And that's kind of nice also, because you feel like you would be there.
Well, I think that's really
Did you travel to Jerusalem
I
to
have
do
been
this?
there, but I didn't travel there to write this.
No.
But I did obviously a lot of research into the geography of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
city back then,
course.
and that's really important because anyone reading a historical novel has to believe it, and so you have to right away within the first chapter or two, you have to make the setting believable, because otherwise the reader will just put down the book. And so I had to create a Bethany and a Jerusalem, and even Alexandria enters into the story, that would capture the reader's attention and would make him or her say to himself or herself, I'm there. I'm there with Lazarus in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. I believe this.
Mm-hmm. I remember me in translation. I had to look up if they had melons. Is that what you call it in English? Melona? Melon?
Could be.
And I thought, that's odd. So I had to check out
yeah.
whether, and of course you had
Yeah, I
already
had to
checked
check
all
too.
that.
Yeah.
You had to check all those things.
The history of food is wonderful, and that's
Very
important to
much
check all
so.
that.
It's difficult to understand really how it tasted. That's difficult also to maybe describe exactly, because you haven't tasted those very odd flavors, like the garum, for instance. Lucius is an importer of garum.
when you do research into the history of food in the
Yeah,
Roman
the
Empire,
garum is
you realize that
very
the
big.
Romans made this fermented fish sauce called garum that they would add to a lot of different dishes. I sometimes think of it maybe like Asian food, because they have fermented fish sauces
fish
and
sauce.
shrimp sauces. I'm not sure exactly what it tastes like, but only like a week ago, someone who had read the novel told me that there are producers making garum again now. So perhaps I'll get to buy some and taste it soon. But whether it tastes like the version that was made 2,000 years ago, I don't know.
You don't know.
But I love researching that. I love researching what people wore, what they ate, how they built their houses, what the streets looked like. Doing all that research is not a sacrifice for me. I just adore.
And the thing is, when we sort of discussed the cover, we went through many different types of cover. And I discovered that Caravaggio painting of Just Lazarus, and that was sort of a very nice tone to it in the coloring. But that's exactly when Jesus stands and he points at Lazarus.
Yes.
The way that you describe it, it's just amazing. Did you see that painting?
I've seen the Zagato painting, I know. I'm not sure I know the Caravaggio painting.
Now, I showed you that one, and
Yeah,
you
you
were
did.
not so keen on putting it in the book.
For some reason, I can't remember why, it seemed a bit too static for me. I wanted something with a bit more spark, a bit more emotion, a bit more visual attention. And using the menorah, I think, is a good idea.
Exactly. We're about to do that soon.
The ancient symbol of Judaism wasn't the Jewish star like most people think. The Jewish star is a new symbol, probably no earlier than the 18th century. Back then, the symbol of Judaism for everyone, for Romans, for Greeks, was the menorah, the candelabrum that we light on Hanukkah.
You kind of learned that in the story.
Yeah, you do learn that.
Because you talk so much about it that I understand that it must be that's the symbol, actually.
Yeah. It was even on the coins minted by the Jewish kings. They had the menorah there.
That's true. That's true. There's so many things that you have researched, and that I had, of course, as a translator, I had to go into that. Is that what they call it in Swedish? Is this da? Like, for instance, when I discovered a word that I didn't even know, and the word in Swedish, it's stenciljer, which is the turned around pillars in the entrance. You let Lazarus go in the entrance there.
Yeah.
And I had to look it up.
Yeah.
So
there's
I was
words I had
really
to look up too.
very, very excited to look it up. And of course I've been to the Peter Church and all that, and of course that's the one. And I didn't know the word in Swedish. I'd never used that word, which was rather exciting.
No,
so I've been also having very much fun translating, I must confess.
Yeah.
And that's also what sort of triggers me, that I can't really know if this is going to be exactly as you wanted to have it. A translation is never possible to do the exact way. You have to sort of feel the go for it,
right?
And then you write it, and we hope very much that the Swedes.
Yeah, and it's not just the language; it's the culture, because you know Swedish culture. You know what Swedes are aware of and what they're not aware of, and you know the nuances of the language and the words and the metaphors that work. That's something that's very difficult in different languages. Metaphors, like Portuguese. I live in Portugal and I read a lot in Portuguese. They use a lot of metaphors of the sea, of ships being shipwrecked, a sea breeze. So, and we don't use that very much in English. And so sometimes when you read a metaphor in Portuguese and have to translate to English, you have to change it completely.
That's true.
And the other thing that's extremely difficult in translation, I find, and I've done quite a bit of translation, is sense of humor. Because there are things that are funny in English that aren't funny in Portuguese.
Oh yes, very much so.
And so then how do you translate it? You have to somehow make it funny in Swedish. So it means changing it slightly.
Slightly, exactly. We were discussing some things during the translation also. That's exactly. The humor is different. But the seriousness of, you remember that I was a little reluctant to put the gospel.
Yeah,
I had
I do.
Lazarus, and I had Lazarus' book, and I had Lazarus this and Lazarus that. And then suddenly I said, well, I have to do the way that you wanted it to be, because you think you're saying that he is actually sitting there, and he doesn't know exactly where the story
Right.
will end up.
Right.
And Lazarus never got to write his evangelium, his gospel.
No, and
So
in the book it's important because this is the story he's telling his grandson.
yeah,
And so it's passing on the tale of his life with his soulmate, with Yeshua ben Yosef. And that's extremely important to Lazarus because obviously having a best friend who's this incredibly special human being and who was murdered for trying to lead a spiritual revolution in the Holy Land, obviously Lazarus would want to pass on that information to his children and grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
So his telling of his gospel is essential to him. It's crucial to him. It's crucial to him that his grandchildren should know about this.
Exactly. Did you ever read the sort of the research on the Death Sea rolls? You mentioned Qumran.
Oh, Qumran, yeah.
Yeah, but you don't elaborate on that.
No.
But I discovered a Swedish professor who has actually done research.
Yeah.
And she is saying exactly that the Essay,
The scenes.
yeah, they sang a lot.
Okay.
And that's the hymns that Jesus and Lazarus are sharing all the time,
Right.
you know. And that I thought I discovered not so long ago, and I thought, well, that's now. Did you really read that, or was it just that came to you? Things that came to you?
I read, when I had the idea for the novel, I had to know about daily life
Yeah,
in the
of
Holy
course.
Land 2,000 years ago. And so that was a huge project. And so I ordered about 40 books.
Yeah.
Everything from Roman mythology and Greek mythology and Jewish mythology to, you know, what people were wearing in the Roman world and the Greek world, what was music like back then, what instruments were played, again, the history of food, what did they eat, how did they cook. The role of women became very important. And so, yes, I try to read everything. I tried, and I've studied music, so somehow music always ends up in my books. I don't know how, but probably because it's been very important to me.
Yeah. So it wasn't actually something that, that's very mysterious, that you wrote about these things that a researcher can sort of confirm by reading
Yeah.
the Qumran rolls. I was very amazed about that. Because I said, oh, he must know that. But if that's new research,
Yeah.
because so that was
Yeah.
rather odd that you had the hymns
Right.
that they were singing, and actually it's confirmed that they did
Yes.
that.
Yeah. Well,
Even if Jesus had his own group,
that's right.
but
Well,
they acted
I
the same
think,
way.
You know, the Jews of Judea, of Jerusalem in that area, and Jesus was from the Galilee. So the Jews of the Galilee, they would have had their own traditions of prayers and music and hymns, and some of them would have been in common, and some of them would have been separate. I mean, there's scenes in the book where Jesus and Lazarus refer to the Galilee, you know, as different from
Oh, yeah.
Jerusalem. And so, like any country, you know, the north of Sweden is different from the south, and in Portugal, again, there's differences in accent, words people use, foods people eat, and that becomes part of the book as well, because not everybody lived, even though they were all Jews, they lived differently. In fact, even the Samaritans were Jewish, but were looked down upon by the other Jews because they didn't have as the center of their religious experience the temple in Jerusalem. They had a mountain,
Exactly. Oh,
which
you
was
talk
their
about
holy
that. Exactly,
mountain.
the holy mountain.
And so the Samaritans were treated, you know, as second-class citizens, which is why the story of the Good Samaritan is so revolutionary. And I never realized that before I did research into the book, because what Jesus was saying was, you people think you're so holy and so proper and ethical. Well, this Samaritan, who you regard as a second-class citizen, not really a good Jew, is much more ethical and moral than you are. And imagine how that lesson would have been received.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, this has been a long talk, and we are about an hour. I don't think you have talked that much. So I'm glad that we didn't get disturbed. Someone came in and disturbed us, because I think I haven't spoiled anything.
No, no spoilers.
We're still sort of no spoilers, but we're still talking about this great novel that we're going to launch tomorrow, hopefully, and we sort of want very many people to come around the two places where we're launching it. First at the H0119 in the H Hall at around 11ish before lunch.
Yeah.
And then after lunch, we're doing the launch that I have announced so much.
Yes.
In the base, in the entrance, or the what do you say, in the basement?
Ground floor.
The ground floor. The thing is that it's very noisy in the ground floor.
It's not going to be easy, but we'll do the best we can.
We'll do the best, and people are coming just to get the novel. If they
That's right.
Now could see this interview, then they didn't know everything about the book. Probably you'll get lots of emails afterwards.
Well, that'd be nice.
That'd be nice.
I do answer my emails.
I know you do. I know you do. That's what I'm saying. Well, not saying that. Well, in that case, you know that people read your book, so that's good.
Very good.
And I'm so really happy that you came after this. I mean, it's been a long journey for us too. And you came all the way from Portugal, 5 hours. And, well, I got to have you here, even if it didn't take so much others' attention. I know that people are coming for the launch.
Okay.
So just let's hope for the best and hope that people like my translation and your book.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for publishing the book. Thank you for translating it. And we'll just hope that people find the book and like it.
Yeah. I do hope they will. And sometimes it takes time. And we'll let them take their time to read. Because 500 pages, you don't read in a sort of 2 hours. You have to have a couple of days. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Tack.
Thank you. Tack, tack.
Tack, tack.